Hello, my name is Mrs. Engel, and I'm going to be reading Chapter 3 of La Linea. First, we'll read it for fluency, and then we'll read it for annotations. Oops, I forgot that it actually begins on the side. Okay, here we go. Also, I hablo un poquito español, so I may skip some of the Spanish words. I don't want to butcher them and put down the culture or the language. Chapter 3. Every year on my birthday, Chewy, Lalo, and I went up to the waterfall to swim. Gracias a Dio for my friends. I had to wait days for Don Clemente, and I'd go crazy if I'd stayed home. Halfway up the path that led me to the hills, Chewy and Lalo sat lounging under the shade of the big tree. Gonna skip that one, said Chewy. He jumped up, pocketing the carving that he was working on. You're late. Most of the springs had dried up, but we knew of one secret place, far back in the hills and higher up. We climbed and climbed until we came to a narrow crevice in the cliff that we had discovered years before. We squeezed our bodies through and into a small gorge. Our little waterfall had dwindled to a trickle, but the pool was there. It wasn't deep enough to dive into, so we stripped down to our underwear and floated in the clear blue water. Remember that time when we were up here we were practicing farting? Chewy asked. He stood up and demonstrated once, just to show that he could still do it. I laughed. Yeah, we tortured Marino real good. He never caught us either. Our farts were quiet, but deadly. Senior Marino was our 5th grade teacher. We hated him because he smelled like old onions, and he picked on Chewy for no good reason. We figured the pedos were at least self-defense against Marino's bad breath. Again, I'm going to skip that one. I pointed at mi amigo. Tu, Lalo? You got all that tequila and beer and dared us to drink it? Oh, man. I thought we'd never quit throwing up. Lalo didn't say anything. He just smiled. He knew I wasn't mad. Up here, we felt hidden from the world. Here, we tried everything first, just to be able to say that we'd done it. I pulled myself out of the water and retrieved the 3 cigarettes I had to sneak from T. Esteban's stash. We lit up. Chewy and I coughed. Lalo inhaled once or twice and blew the smoke out expertly, like he smoked a pack a day. And then he ground the cigarette out and lay it flat on the gray rock. Lalo dipped his head into the water. When he came up for air, he shook his dark, thick hair like a dog, spraying water all over the 3 of us. Mi voy, he said matter-of-factly. I'm going to La Capital. My aunt knows the director of the good preparatora there. I can get in and live with her. I wasn't surprised Lalo was finally getting out. He wanted to be a doctor, and he couldn't do that in San Juanito. He always said he couldn't go. Lalo didn't belong in San Juanito any more than I did. If he was really leaving, maybe that meant that I'd really go too. We let the sun dry us for a long time, taking in Lalo's news. Good, Chewy said finally. Good. Don't quit. He didn't say anything else. We all knew Chewy wasn't going anywhere. All of a sudden, he leaped to his feet. He pulled his wiry frame from his toe holds in the rocks at the side of the gorge until he reached the top. Then he motioned for us to follow. The 3 of us sat cross-legged, gazing down at the valley below. The roofs of San Juanito glinted in the sun. Smoke curled up from the rancheros. Chewy pointed to the east to 2 figures in an empty field, one atop a small tractor, the other walking behind. It was Chewy's father and his older brother. They had vowed to not give up on San Juanito. Chewy's father had formed a group to try to attract tourists. His mother even had some crazy idea about selling her weaving to the, I'm going to guess this is tourists who came. I didn't know why anyone would want to visit San Juanito. Chewy knew that he was part of his father's big scheme. He seemed to be resigned to the plan. Myra, Chewy pulled the carving out of his pocket. It was one fantastical, mythical, animated creations. This one had horns, claws, fangs, and wings painted in a dozen brilliant colors. Despite its scary looks, the creature seemed good and kind, like the little boy playing with a toy. Chewy lifted the figure up and made it fly through the air. I imagined it life-size, carrying me through the sky up to the north, across La Linea to California. I'm going too, I said suddenly. I got a letter from Papa. I'm going soon. Twice before, Papa had announced it was time for me to follow him up north. Both times I told Chewy and Lalo that I was going for sure. In the end, there wasn't enough money. Both times I had to admit Papa's failure on making good on his promises. Chewy and Lalo looked at each other, not at me. Chewy started laughing. Lalo punched him in my arm playfully. He shook his head in disbelief and scrambled to his feet and pointed down to San Juanito. Ay, Miguel, Lalo tossed. You'll grow old and die here, along with all the other... Not going to try to say that. I couldn't say anything back to Lalo. Maybe he was right. Papa had let me down before. I couldn't let it happen again. Half the time, I wasn't even sure if he wanted me with him in California. Wouldn't a father sacrifice whatever it took to bring his only son to his side? If he missed me, really missed me, wouldn't he have come for me himself a long time ago? All right, so now we're going to go back and we're going to do some annotations. Again, a lot of times what I like to tell my students to look for is to look for who had what problem and so what. Now, we've learned that Miguel is our narrator of the story, and so we always want to keep it in Miguel's mind. We also want the conflict. We know the major conflict is him going up north, okay? And so whatever we do, we really want to connect it to those two things. In the last chapter, we realized a couple reasons why it was important for him to go up north. Number one, his dad didn't want him to have to drop out of school like he did and work in the fields, which was really hard. And at the end of chapter 2, we also learned that their farm, their ranchero, the corn was dying, there was no money, and they would starve if they didn't get the money that his dad sent to him. Now, a lot of this is just kind of setting up this other part of the problem. So we really want to hone in on the paragraphs that are related to this problem, that there really isn't enough money in the city. And then we also kind of learned something else in this chapter as well. So this is just building up some background information. We learn a couple things. We learn that he has these friends, okay, and they kind of go up to this secret place to try things, just to say that they've tried them and to kind of like just be boys and learn from each other. And so really there is this theme of getting out, okay? So his friend says, matter-of-factly, I'm going to the capital, right? And this word here, even if I don't know what that is, I can assume it is a prep school. It is a school, okay? And his friend wasn't surprised that he was getting out. And again, we look for these similar repeated words. So Let's see. So you're going to kind of be looking for this word or this phrase that is similar to getting out, right? And we learned that he wanted to be a doctor. That word couldn't is negative. He could not do that where he was. And again, in the previous chapter, we learned he couldn't do that where he was because there's really no money within this town. Okay? He always said he would go. And this is kind of interesting. He didn't belong here any more than I did. So I'm not quite sure what that means. If it's because they're more educated, they are more ready to be educated, that's not really stated. Okay, but here's like also a key thing. He says, if he's really leaving, then maybe that meant that I would really go too. Okay, so this kind of adds to the conflict or the rising action of the story because now we see multiple people getting out. We also learned over here that his father twice before, oh, actually, maybe I'll erase that for just a minute. Okay, twice before, Papa had announced it was time for me to go north. Both times I told Chewy that I was going for sure. Here's those words again. Going. Those words pop up. So that's really important in this chapter. And then he said, in the end, there wasn't enough money both times. And he failed to make good on his promises. Okay? So we learned that. But also, there's this kind of interesting piece down here where two friends are leaving, right? And then you kind of get this image in your head. Two figures are working in an empty field, right? And we learn that it's Chewy's father and his older brother. And they vowed, not to give up on the town, right? They want to attract tourists. They want to sell, this probably means indigenous weaving, right, to the tourists. But I don't know how many tourists there really are there. So if I was going to ask a question to my students, I might say something like this. I might ask them, how does this chapter contribute to the rising action of the story? Okay, and then the answer, again, you restate the question. This chapter contribute to the rising action because we see people leaving the town, and it causes or it shows kind of like different beliefs that the town can actually be saved. Okay, so some believe that the town can be saved, that they can make a comeback, and most people are saying nope, it's not going to happen, and so they're leaving. And so again, when they say going, 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 that's that repetition that says this is the most important part and this is how it's contributing to the rising action. I hope that this has helped you understand chapter 3, and we'll see if I read and annotate chapter 4 or if my colleague is going to do it in the future. Talk to you later.